So let me tell you a story, which you might have heard. Too bad. In the bad old days in Russia, the Chabad community, if there was a community, was severely devastated because every family lost someone to the communists. The previous Rebbe waged war against the communists. Everybody else was trying to get away. Everybody else was trying to survive. The previous Rebbe declared war on communism. And he made it his task to defeat communism, to destroy communism. How? By maintaining the truth. Because emes, the truth, overcomes everything. And when the truth is stated, when the truth is presented, even the most evil people fall to their knees. But it took a few sacrifices. Wherever the communists shut down a mikveh, Chassidim built a new one. It was a cat and mouse game. And those who did it risked their lives and lost their lives by the hundreds. The typical punishment for teaching Judaism, particularly to children, for building a mikveh, the typical punishment was 10 years of labor camps, or firing squad, or exile. Exile meant they take you to a very remote place, usually in Siberia, and you have to find your own food, you have to find your own lodging, but you can't leave that village. One of the places that they chose as an exile village was a small place on the banks of the river Ob. The name of the village was Che. Che near Ob. The people there are very primitive. Before the communists came to their village in the 30s, they had never seen fire because nothing there burns. It's all frozen. They live off the reindeer. Everything is the reindeer. Their clothing, their tents, their food, their drink, it's all the reindeer. They even domesticate reindeer and hitch 5 or 6 reindeer to a sled and fly over the ice. In the warmer months, when they can dig through the ice, they'll catch a fish. When desperate, they'll eat polar bear, but they don't like it. So their whole life is centered around the reindeer. They kill a reindeer by suffocating it because they don't want to lose any blood, because the blood of the reindeer is their favorite drink. So they kill the reindeer. They sit around in a circle eating raw meat and drinking out of a bowl in the center the reindeer blood. This is the place the communists chose to be an exile village. So they built a building there for the prison officials, for the communists, and they introduced the villagers to kerosene. The villagers are called Samoyeds. They're like Eskimos. Anyway, a busload of prisoners were dropped off in the village of Che. Among them was a chassid by the name of Rifal, arrested for building a mikveh. The last 2 years of his sentence was spent in Che. He had been in prisons, he had been in gulags, now he was in exile. When he first arrived, he tried to live in a cave because he wanted to put his tefillin on in the mornings. But after one night, it was obvious that this was impossible. There was no way to stay warm. And so he was forced to rent space in the tent or the hut of one of the Samoyeds. The Samoyed would hang a curtain around the mat, and that was your room. So all the prisoners rented space in a Samoyed hut. The way he paid for it was with cigarettes that his wife sent him from Moscow. Early morning, he got up to put on his tefillin. And as he was wearing his tefillin, the Samoyed walked in. They don't have rules of privacy. He walked in. They're staring at each other. The chassid is thinking, what's going to happen now? Now they're going to kill me. Or they'll take away the tefillin. But he didn't realize how primitive these people were. The Samoyed staring at him had no idea what he was looking at. And finally the Samoyed said, is this what they do in Moscow? It's like a big city thing? He said, yeah. And after that, he didn't have to hide the tefillin. Friday night, the Samoyed lit a kerosene lamp for his family, and then he lit another one for the chassid. Now, when a non-Jew performs a labor on Shabbos that is prohibited, and if he does it specifically for a Jew, then the Jew is not allowed to benefit from it. So the lamp that he lit for the chassid couldn't use. So he said, can I have the other one? So the guy said, no, they're the same. He said, yeah, but can I have the other one? The guy said, why? He said, I can't explain it. Can I just, if it's all the same, give me the other one. Fine. The next week, the Samoyed lights that one for the chassid and brings it to him. And the chassid says, can I have the other one? After a few months, the Samoyeds developed a great respect for the chassid because they saw that this man is for real. The prison gave prisoners a certain amount of bread per day and some soup. He never ate the soup because it wasn't kosher. He ate the bread because there was no reason for the Russians to put any ingredients into the bread. So it was just plain flour and water. So it was kosher. They started calling him the holy man. And they made an agreement among themselves that when they catch a fish, they have to show it to the holy man first. If it's fit for him to eat, it's his. If he can't eat it, then they sit around like in the circle and they share the fish among themselves. The first Pesach that he was there, he told the prison, the communists, that he will not accept the bread. Because on Pesach, you're not allowed to eat bread, you're not allowed to own bread, and you're not allowed to benefit from the bread. So he couldn't even give it to somebody else, because that would be a benefit. So he told them that he will not accept the bread. And he lived for 8 days on the matzah. The second year, Pesach was coming, and the matzah hadn't arrived. It seems that that year, when Pesach came around, the ice was beginning to melt on the river, but it was still too thick for boats to get through. So the boats weren't coming through, and the sleds were too dangerous. So nothing was being delivered. Every day, the Samoyeds ran to the government building to see if the matzah had arrived, because they were worried for the chassid. Because they knew if the matzah doesn't arrive, he will starve. He will die rather than eat the bread. Every morning they ran to see if the matzah arrived, hadn't arrived. A few days before Pesach, a messenger came down from the Arctic port saying that a high-ranking official wants to come visit Chet, and they should send a sled to pick him up. So they chose a guy and told him to go. He was nervous because the ice was starting to thin. So when they asked him to pick up the packages and bring back the mail, he refused because that would add weight to the sled. He comes to the port and he goes into the post office to pick up his own packages or mail. And the guy in the post office says, I've got a box. It's addressed to Che. I think you should take it. He said, but I don't want to add weight to the sled. And the guy said, no, this looks like a very important package. I've never seen anything like it. So I think you should take it because they might send you back special for this. So he took it. Because the box was covered, the entire surface, stamps and seals and labels and signatures. It looked like the most important, the most official piece of mail he had ever seen. He brings it back to Chet, and sure enough, it's the matzah. What the communists did, knowing that it was matzah, his wife had mailed it long before Purim. Instead of sending it north, they sent it south, timing it to arrive at Chet after Pesach, just to be cruel. So every post office that it came to put another stamp on it. Eventually, they started sending it back up north. By the time it got to the port, it looked like the most important piece of mail a guy had ever seen. The Samoyeds were so thrilled that the matzah had arrived that they picked the chassid up on their shoulders and did a little dance. And they sang this little song, "The God of the Jews takes care of his people." As they were dancing, the chassid said to the one other Jew, who was also a prisoner, but not because he built a mikveh, but because he was a gangster, who was not interested in matzah, he said to him, Gins, tomorrow night, come to my tent, and we'll share the matzah, we'll make a seder. The Samoyeds didn't like that idea. They objected. And they said, no, don't give him no holy bread. He's no good. We saw him kill a bird and eat it. Knowing that the Samoyeds are very fickle people, so they can love you, they can kill you. It doesn't make any difference to them. So he had to think fast, and he said, right, if you promise me, Gins, if you promise me you won't eat anything you're not allowed to eat for the next 8 days, then I'll share the matzah with you. And the Samoyeds approved. That night, 2 Samoyeds slip into the tent where Gins is sleeping. And they put a knife to his throat. And they said, we heard the holy man make an agreement with you. We're going to be watching. If you eat anything besides that holy bread, we'll cut your throat. He was motivated. He kept Pesach very carefully that year. And a few months later, the chassid had completed his 10 years and they sent him home. He comes back to Moscow. The baby he had left is now a bar mitzvah boy. And the family, of course, wants to know, how did they treat you? Are you okay? Did they hurt you? And he said, let's not be silly. Let me tell you what I learned. The first year when I was arrested, I was in a prison just a few miles here from Moscow. Pesach came. He said to his wife, you remember you brought me matzah to the prison. What you don't know is that Pesach night, the Seder night, I asked the guard to give me the matzah, but he wouldn't. He said, in prison, you eat prison food. I begged, I pleaded, I threatened, I cried. Wouldn't give me the matzah. I even made a deal with God that if I would get that piece of matzah for the Seder, I'm willing to sit an 11th year. But they wouldn't give me the matzah. He says, I cried all night, bitter tears, but I never got the matzah. On the other hand, Ginz in Che didn't want to eat matzah. He wasn't interested. But the Samoyeds put a knife to his throat, made out of reindeer bone, and said, you eat that or we'll kill you. So he ate matzah. He says, listen to this. When I was crying for a piece of matzah in jail, the night went by and nothing divine happened because I didn't have matzah. In Che, Ginz didn't want to eat matzah, but he did, and something divine happened in Che. That's the nature of a mitzvah. It's not what I feel, what I think, and what it does to me. That's only important to your shidduch. So if you want a shidduch, you want to marry into a family, marry into the chassid's family. He's a really nice guy. Ginz is not. But that's human. Divine is when God needs something and it happens. Then you've introduced something divine into this world. So when Ginz ate matzah, something divine happened in Che. And it's very likely that that was the whole purpose. That's why they chose Che to be a place for prisoners, for exile. That's why he was there. That's why the matzah came late. That's why Ginz was there, so that Ginz helped make Che a place for divinity, for God's presence, because he ate matzah in Che. If you enjoyed this conversation or this topic, and you're looking for more information, or you want to hear it again from another angle, there is a way to do that, and that is in this book. It's all there. Order it from Amazon. You can read it, reread it, and share it.